into the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Use code DNVR when you sign up for a new account to get amazing odds boosts every single day. We got an early watch along, close enough, early pregame for you because we're watching along at the arena with the takeover. We're taking the party bus down there. It's going to be an absolute blast. I'm looking forward to it. I got Jesse with me. I got Megan with me. Avs taking on Calgary. Obviously, Nas back in the building. A lot of fanfare around him in the morning skate and things like that.
Yeah.
How, Jesse, I know you talked to him. How's Nas feeling over there in Calgary?
Good. So, dude, I was walking out talking with D-Mac, and we were just laughing because, like, I hate how much swag and swagger gets talked about in sports because people talk about that like it's something that, like, makes a player better. I don't necessarily think that, but I do think that is something that Nazem Kadri just brings. Like, there is just an extra level of confidence and, just like owning the room. And that was kind of how he was talking, how he was acting, how he was feeling. And someone asked him, like, they're going to do a video tribute for you. What highlight are you hoping would be in there? And people get asked that question a lot, and usually it's like, oh, I would just be honored if they did one.
Anything.
Blah, blah, blah. And Naz was like, I don't know. There's so many to pick from. But I think the OT goal in the finals, that's one that I'd love to see. And like,
it's awesome moment. It makes such a bad highlight.
Oh, yeah, dude, it does, for sure. But, like, he's got that. That's like, yeah, I know it was sick. That was a sick moment. So hoping to see that. And yeah, it was fun to talk to him again. He was always a pleasure to chat with last year, and so it was good to talk to him. I don't remember if we were live or not when I said this, but he got off the ice early, got showered up, got cleaned up before he came out and talked to the media. Talked for a good 5-6 minutes, and talked about what it's like in Calgary, what the transition's been like, but talked a lot about being back. And I asked him, is this kind of like the last page that you have to turn to close this chapter and start your Calgary Flames, tenure? And he said something that I thought was interesting. He said when you win a championship, that chapter is never really closed. And so, yeah, it was just, you could definitely tell he was a bit emotional. There's a couple of videos out there of him just staring at the Cup banner on the ice. Yeah. Just standing out there, just staring up for like a good 30 seconds. So, it's going to be an emotional night. I definitely think that this is going to be the biggest ovation that we've probably ever seen, just because back in the in the days when cap casualties were Peter Forsberg and Adam Foote and stuff like that, teams, especially the Avs, didn't really do the video tribute stuff.
Yeah.
There wasn't really like a big moment kind of given to the returning player. So this is, I think, the biggest one that I can think of since the Avs have really started doing the video tributes and highlight packages and stuff, just especially what Kadri meant to that Cup team in particular, let alone his entire tenure here. So I definitely think it's going to be a cool night. I think it's going to be a cool moment, and I'm looking forward to it.
Should be a fun one. The other Avs news of the day, they trade Shane Bowers for goaltender Keith Kinkaid of the Boston Bruins AHL affiliate. Megan, first of all, expectations for Kinkaid. Do you even think he's going to see significant times with the Avs tonight? Not tonight, overall, the rest of the season. And then two, how much do the Avs really give up in Shane Bowers?
That feels like a pointed question. What's sort of a baiting question, but it's interesting. I don't expect Kinkaid plays much for the Avs through the rest of the season. I think it was a depth addition just to bolster whatever that third string option ends up being between Johansson or Annunen. Kinkaid is sort of there to then back up in Loveland for the Eagles, who are hoping to also make a playoff push of their own. So it's a really solid way to bolster the goaltending in Loveland as well. And if emergency, break glass in case of emergency needed it, that would also be a nice option to have instead of someone like Trent Miner, who is just a little untested at the American League level as it stands. That's not necessarily who you want then in the depth queue down the line. So I think it's honestly a transaction that extracts really good value from both sides. It's tough. We talked about this before we went on, but Shane Bowers is so far removed from his first round pedigree that as time passes each deadline, I think that loses a little bit more value because that next phase that's going to earn league-wide value is then playing in NHL games. And he was so close to getting that this season, but of course it's interrupted by injury. And honestly, this isn't even Shane Bowers' fault at this point, but when your tenure here is mired by injury the way that his was, it makes it really difficult to build a portfolio that is going to attract other teams for a future. And so for that reason, I mentioned that I don't know what his ceiling is because we really just didn't get to see. Even coming back from injury, there was a trend in him as a player that it was just difficult for him to get his footing at the American League level. And because he was constantly each season having something new crop up, whether it be injury or COVID, he just never was able to quite get the footing in Loveland that I think he had even hoped for, that I really do think a change of scenery was necessary for him. So, getting a veteran goaltender out of the deal is, I think, a very fair trade. And if Boston can utilize him, because he is a player that wasn't utilized as a center very much here, but if they would like to use Shane Bowers as a center, he has that in his toolkit. He's an interesting 23-year-old prospect in that right then, that I don't think they're getting nothing out of this either. It's just like a like a blank slate of marble, or I don't know, something to be molded.
Tabula rasa.
There you go.
Look, the reality is, even if you're like me and you believe Shane Bowers is an NHL caliber player and he has that in him, on paper, there's not a whole lot of value there. He doesn't have that impressive of AHL statistics. He has the injuries that you were talking about, Megan. So, as far as trade value is concerned, I just don't see how the Avs could have gotten much for him. And getting anything for him is... I'm not going to call it a win because I really don't know how much impact Kinkaid ends up having. But it's not a loss. It's just...
Megan, your point about the getting further and further away from him being a first-round pick, I think, is so important because... Again, I had a bunch of people in my mentions today talking about, oh my gosh, I can't believe they gave up Shane Bowers for this. I had multiple people use the phrase overpayment. Wow, they way overpaid for a depth goalie. 3 years ago, you're talking about, wow, first round pick. This is just a stacked lineup. He's hasn't quite cracked it. You could really sell that upside. And I think he would have been a nice trade chip, whether it be as an add-on or in some type of straight one-for-one deal. But yeah, with every year, with every injury, with every time, every month that he's gone without getting a call-up, without getting an NHL game, that trade value is just diminished more and more and more. And so, yeah, I think it's maybe where it feels like Shane Bowers had a ton of value because 3-4 years ago he did when the Avs first acquired him in the Matt Duchene deal. He was a decent part of that package.
Yep.
Right.
And you got first-round pick Shane Bowers, who's, I think he was either heading to college or was in the middle of his first year.
He was a freshman.
Yeah. So, he did have a lot of value at that time, and had the Avs dealt him in the next year or two, yes, he probably still would have carried a lot of weight. But now, third-string goalie probably is about where his value is at, unfortunately, because I do think that all three of us are believers in Shane Bowers, or at least think that he's got some level of NHL potential still in him.
Weirdly enough, don't see how he gets into Boston's lineup.
Right.
That's my big concern for him as the person, but...
Yeah.
Right, because usually in these types of deals, Martin Kaut's a great example.
Right. Goes to
He's
a
going
bad
to go to
San
a
Jose.
bad team where they're
Yes.
going to give him a chance to play because what do they care?
Yep.
Boston, it's that's Colorado East. They're also trying to win. I don't really see them being, Shane Bowers, less than 2 minutes of NHL time to your name? Come on, we're right in the middle of a cup run. It's
Don't know about that. Getting into the game tonight, actually, look, this is the third set of games in a row. We don't need to tell you about the situation of a back-to-back.
I hold on real quick. I'm so sorry. Just that last comment that came up about JoJo. This is the one thing I do just want to put out there. I have had a couple people, one person tell me that it's their understanding that Jonas Johansson is being, for lack of a better term, recruited back to potentially a Swedish pro league. And then I did have someone throw that out to me today on Twitter, like, could this be JoJo heading back to Europe? And just taking the information that I've gotten combined with, the person just like throwing that out there, I actually don't think that's something that we should rule out, even if you're not talking about in the immediate. If he's planning on leaving this summer, I don't know, maybe the Avs just said, we'll go get our AHL split guy for the next couple years right now. But JoJo leaving for Europe, I actually don't think is like completely
outrageous.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, fair enough. In tonight's game, again, it's a third set of back-to-backs. You know the drill with SEGABABAs at this point. We don't have to go over that again. What I want to talk about, though, is this year's Avalanche team is now 2 points back from Winnipeg, 3 points back from Dallas. Last year, they were never in a situation where they're trying to chase someone down in the regular season standings, at least in division. You know, there was a little bit of a conversation about President's Trophy. But do the Avs this year need to have a little bit of a different approach? I know 6, 7, 8 games ago we said more of a, hey, take this one game at a time. It's a long way to those guys at the top of the division. Now they're right there. Is that something that starts creeping into their minds?
Well, not to kind of boo-hoo all over the question, but Jared Bednar straight up told us a couple days ago that it is.
There you go.
That they have officially shifted the conversation internally to, we are chasing down first in the Central. But I still do think that what made this team so successful last year and what will make them successful at the end of this year, if they continue to do what I think we've seen them showing a much better example in these last couple games, is the taking it a game at a time. Last season, the Avs never looked forward. They never looked backward. It was, what are we dealing with today? How do we win this game? Doesn't matter what injuries we've had, which guys are coming back. We are dealing with this game here tonight, today, whatever. And that's all we're concerned with. And then within that game, we were talking about this shift, this period. Now we're talking about this shift, this power play. And that's how the Avs maintained the level of success they did last year. I think if they approached these last 25-something games with that same type of attitude, I think that's what's gotten them back into the race to this point, and that's what will eventually get them to another Central Division title. Is you don't care about what everyone else is doing. We don't care what happened last night. We are worried about winning this game tonight, regardless of who we have available to us or not.
That was something that Bednar talked a lot about in the playoffs, to the 5 minutes at a time, breaking the game down to every single 5 minutes. And I think what will be interesting is last year, because they were so dominant and climbed atop the West as quickly as they did, they were able to, I don't want to say coast, but they were able to get a little funny with some of those last leg of the season games where we saw Ben Myers make his debut, and there were a lot of guys that were getting sat as a precaution just to make sure they were playoff ready and rested because they knew that was coming.
Experimenting with combinations as well.
Yep.
Exactly. They're in kind of a different position, though. I think this home stretch is going to be a lot more spirited because they are chasing that down. That I distinctly remember the conversations at some of those last few games was concern. Can the Avs turn it back on for the playoffs? Because we've watched them turn it off for a couple games here. Can they turn it back on? They obviously did, but it'll be interesting then because they're going to be in this playoff ready mode if they're going out the end of this season as competitive as we're expecting them to be if they are chasing down the Central. And so as a result, they're going to be really wired by the time the playoffs come around because they're going to have been playing more or less playoff hockey leading up to that. And that was something of a concern last year, which it didn't end up being one. But I think it'll be interesting and different for them to ramp up that intensity now.
Less can they flip the switch on and more can they keep it on.
Can they keep it on?
Cogs talked to me about that a little bit, and he actually said, he goes, we kind of like this right now, getting ramped up ahead of time. And him, Mikko, and Jared have all said to me at different points in the last couple weeks, what you said, Megan, but they straight up said, yeah, we coasted into the end of the season. Fully took our foot off the gas. Jared Bednar used a really funny word. I can't remember what it is now, but they all fully acknowledge, we took that time off and we were lucky that we were able to get things going. But yeah, Cogs was telling me the other day, he's like, I kind of like this. I kind of like that we're having to ramp it up right now so that by the time we hit the playoffs, it's just you're in it.
Yeah.
I hope they can keep it on that way. I hope they keep going and do what they need to do. I certainly think they're fully capable of it. Would certainly be a good start to find a way to get 11 out of 12 in this back-to-back set. Calgary, beatable team this year, it seems like. You haven't gotten the production out of guys like Huberdeau. Uyghur's been good, but not like all-star caliber on their defensive side.
They're desperate. They're desperate tonight.
They are a desperate team.
We were talking before, Rudo. I don't know who they chase down. Like, you're starting to look at it, and like the math doesn't look good for them. And you're saying like, who do you catch? And so like they really need this game. They got into town yesterday afternoon. They're well rested. The Avs didn't skate today, and I didn't see players showing up until after 11.
Yeah.
So their plane landed just after 1 last night, the Avs. I feel like we were pretty
accurate,
fucking spot on with what we had kind of estimated with being in bed around 2 to 2:30.
Yep.
Assuming that they didn't need to get to the facility until sometime between 9 and 10.
Yep.
Obviously, like I said, guys were pouring in after 11, so
even an extra hour.
Even an extra hour, like, you're probably pretty well rested. You slept in your own bed last night. Like, I don't know. I think...
Unless you're Devon Taves and there's a baby right next to your bed.
Right. The Avs shouldn't have that. That shouldn't be too much of a concern coming out of the gates for tonight's game.
Calgary's vulnerable. They came out of the All-Star game break with some rough games themselves. They've been struggling a little bit to build consistent momentum winning games. And we talked before we went live about the changes in personnel to the team this year, that they just haven't quite grown comfortable with each other. I love Jesse's take that they'll be a better team next year. I fully believe that, but I still think they are learning a lot about each other. They've dealt with their own string of injuries too, so that hasn't made it much easier for them to have cohesion. That I think they're going to be really looking to chase the reigning champs in this game tonight, but they have some hurdles of their own that are going to make that difficult.
I agree. I hope
they're squeezing. They're squeezing the sticks a little bit right now.
I agree with that.
To jump on them early. There's question marks in net. Markstrom has not had a good year. The Calgary media was kind of pressing Daryl Sutter this morning on the decision to go with Markstrom, get to Markstrom early. If you can have, obviously I'm not expecting a 4-goal opening 9 minutes, but if you can have a first similar to what you had last night, get a couple goals, get feeling good, get the building into it, I think you're spot on, Megan. This Calgary is a vulnerable team right now. You can jump on them and bury them.
As long as we can keep away from the ex-Avs curse, all right?
Did you see the Yellowstone quote that you guys put out? Actually, that just unlocked the memory of that. That's pretty intense from Sutter. So we'll see what kind of momentum they come out the gate with.
Yeah.
$2 from Rick here, who says, does Bowers become the next AJ Greer? Maybe. I don't know.
Let's also not act like AJ Greer's like blowing up the scene.
Dude has 10 points in 42 games, which is like, hey, that's a fourth liner in the NHL, but
perfectly passable.
He's not popping off or anything. All right, we got to get to our betting segment here. I'm curious, actually. I didn't even check the line. All right, so it's like a pick'em. It's like a pick'em, basically. You can get Avs on the 60-minute line plus money if that's the way you want to go about it. They can see what they need to see. There you go. There's the rest of it. I'm always a fan of over in SEGABABAs because defense is hard to do, so I would take the over as well.
I'm going through them right now.
The way McKinnon is playing, do not bet against that guy to score. Dude's just been on a mission the last handful of games, so I would take McKinnon as well.
Yeah, the Avs are plus 130 on the 60-minute line.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Not bad.
Not terrible. Or, if you think Kadri's going to pop off back in Ball Arena, bet on Kadri and the Flames. Always an option to go that way with it. Whatever you do at DraftKings, make sure you use the DNVR code when you sign up. When you bet $5 with a new account, you get $200 in free bets that you can bet on whatever you want. Highly recommend you jump on that option. And once you've done that, who cares? Go bet on literally anything under the sun. As long as you're 21 or older, other terms, restrictions, and conditions apply. See the show notes down below for details. And, of course, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. This is an early one, but I've got a party bus to go catch. Going to go watch this one live in person, so it's going to be a fun one for me. I hope for those of you joining us, come say hi to me. We'll have a great old time on the bus, at the game, at the bar, all of it. For the rest of you, enjoy the game. We will be having a post-game. Megan and I will be live. It's going to be like 30 minutes, 45 minutes after the game ends, so it might be a little bit late, especially for you East Coast folks, but we will have a live post-game. We hope to see you there, and we will talk to you later.